Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and with patch 8.3 nearing the end, sort of its PTR cycle, and Shadowlands being the next big thing on the horizon outside of actual Ny'alotha, I want to take some time and talk about Warlock-specific abilities that I'd like to see return in Shadowlands. Now, at BlizzCon, we were made aware that for Warlocks, curses will be making their triumphant return in Shadowlands. At this point, we indeed have confirmation of 4 curses, being Curse of Doom, Curse of Tongues, Curse of Recklessness, and Curse of Weakness. It was also mentioned that we'll be receiving Demonic Circle back as a baseline ability, which is an amazing change, as well as the return of Ritual of Doom, which is surely going to ensure plenty of Goldshire destruction. What I want to talk about, however, today are both spells that have been removed from the game that I would like to see make a return, as well as certain abilities that we currently have access to going baseline. I will say that I'm sure I'll most likely miss someone's favorite ability that they have their fingers crossed for, and if I do, be sure to leave it in the comment section below, and I'd love to take it into further consideration. Now, the first ability that I want to start off with is actually Searing Pain. Long gone are the days of Warlock tanking Burning Crusade bosses, but even after Burning Crusade, Searing Pain did indeed stick around for a while, but was deemed useless in most scenarios. It is one of the old school iconic Warlock spells that sadly faded into irrelevancy near the end of its lifespan. I would love to see Searing Pain return in Shadowlands, but with a bit of a twist. Seeing as how currently Destruction is the least mobile spec the Warlocks have, really only being able to cast Conflag on the move, I would like to see Searing Pain return in similar form to how Scorch currently functions, where it can be cast on the move. I think leaving the high amount of threat generation on the effect would also make for a bit of balancing, as it does greatly increase our mobility, but also gives us something to watch out for being our threat. Seeing as how threat has not really been something of real relevance in modern WoW recently at all, I think it would add a bit more depth to PvE based combat as a whole and force players to, at times, manage their threat like days of old. Speaking of iconic Warlock abilities, Hellfire is another iconic Warlock ability that was pruned many years ago and is frequently mentioned whenever this debate arises. Not only did Hellfire make for some interesting death skips as a Warlock through locked doors or other places, it also was a strong source of burst AoE based damage, but at a significant price. If given the choice, I would certainly prefer the moving Hellfire version and not the one that requires you to remain stationary, but either form would be a welcome return. One thing that I would be very interested in would be if they gave us Hellfire back across all 3 Warlock specs, or just Destruction. There would also certainly be weeks where Hellfire management would be much more important than others in Mythic Plus, say Bursting or Skittish weeks. Having Hellfire back baseline across every spec would also give us a spell to cast on the move, as long as it's the moving version of Hellfire, but it would also require mobs to be in melee range. Howl of Terror is an ability that was removed in BFA, and one that I feel would really benefit Warlocks as a whole across all 3 specs, both in PvE and PvP. Now, we've seen different versions of Howl of Terror across WoW's history, being instant cast and also having a cast time, but I can say there have been plenty of times in Battle for Azeroth where Howl would have saved me in both PvP and PvE scenarios. At this point, I'd even take it as just a war mode based talent, but the fact that it's not within our toolkit at all currently is an actual shame. I do feel though that if Blizzard is really looking to bring back class identity while also unpruning useful abilities, they really could not go wrong with returning both Demon Armor and Fel Armor to our toolkit. While we do sort of have Demon Armor currently via War Mode in BFA, it's sadly not usable in Raiding or Mythic Plus. Having access to both brings back the additional stamina that Warlock is known for, in addition to some extra health regen and spell power. Now, while I would actually like to see spell power return on gear in Shadowlands regardless, it will be pretty easy to rework Fel Armor around granting a baseline amount of intellect or something of the sort, while giving Demon Armor its iconic health and armor buff. Depending on the actual tuning of each, it would hopefully mean that both were used in different scenarios, such as arenas versus raiding, or even as specific as Mythic progression, where you initially want a larger health pool, and then swap to Fel Armor further into progression for the actual spell power bonus. Now, in addition to certain abilities that I hope make a return in Shadowlands, there are also a few changes that can be made to which I feel would help further improve the overall fluidity and utility of Warlock, while also bringing back what the player base is seeking. Having Fire and Brimstone baseline for Destruction would be a massive step in the right direction, as it addresses Destruction's lack of AoE in a sense in Mythic Plus, as well as the issue of having it on the same talent row currently as Cataclysm, which is the only single target DPS option we have there. I personally would love to see the Fire and Brimstone that we had in WoD, where it included Chaos Bolt, but a lot of that playstyle was fueled by the Charred Remains talent, which is sadly a thing of the past. This would also help address the issue of Destruction feeling shard starved at times in Mythic Plus, as Incinerate on large packs would be generating a substantial amount more shards, which fuels more Arena Fire cast or Havoc windows, etc. Sticking with the Destruction theme, I would also love to see Shadowburn return as another baseline spell for Destruction in Shadowlands. Not only does it give us a spell to cast on the move, which is something Destruction lacks at the moment, it also gives us the ability to quickly finish off low health enemies that need to die quickly without losing resources. While it is currently a talent in BFA, it competes directly with Reverse Entropy in the level 30 talent row, and is not really ever an option outside of Explosive Weeks. It's also castable through Havoc, which gives us another spell outside of Conflag to squeeze in the last second or so of that Havoc window. Now, swapping the Demonology, even though this current form of Demonology is only 1.5 expansions old, I was really hoping in BFA that Thalkael's Consumption, or an equivalent of that, would be ported over from Legion, as they mentioned some spells would make their way into becoming actual talents in BFA. Now, obviously we no longer have our Demonology artifact weapon, but as a master summoner, the effect does not seem too hard to tie into our actual toolkit or talent tree as a whole. It would also make for some interesting gameplay if Demonic Empowerment remains a talent heading into Shadowlands, as DE consumes all of your active imps. Depending on the actual cooldown, it does indeed fit the single target turret playstyle that Demonology currently has, but I have this creeping feeling that we might indeed be in for a rework of sorts in Shadowlands regardless. I would make a Demonic Empowerment joke here as well, but I think a large portion of their player base is still scarred from Legion Demonology at this point. Now, as far as utility goes, Warlock could certainly use some love there, and I think a great place to start is by bringing back Glyph of Fear. This would indeed turn Fear into a useful form of CC in Mythic Plus, and greatly increase our overall utility. I do know that the recent forms of Inscription really only bring cosmetic effects and no longer alter the way spells function, but Blizzard has mentioned how they want to make professions relevant again, and I think this would be a good step in that direction. Outside of Banish or using Fear as a pseudo-interrupt, we really don't have many other ways of interacting in Mythic Plus, while other classes do. I really don't see any downside with Glyph of Fear returning in Shadowlands, as it is sort of a two birds, one stone kind of solution as well. This would also open the door for other useful glyphs that we previously had access to outside of Warlock to return, thus improving the state of Inscription overall across every class in Shadowlands. Now, I do want to take a minute and talk about a handful of other abilities, such as Life Tap, Empowered Life Tap, Old Demonic Sacrifice, Charred Remains, Drain Mana, and Ember Tap that I'm hoping for a return of, but I just don't honestly think they'll be making a return in Shadowlands. Life Tap is arguably Warlock's most iconic spell, and while I was disappointed seeing it go in BFA, a return of Life Tap would mean a rework of our entire spellbook and mana pool as a whole. Now, I personally feel that mana and resource management should be a part of Warcraft anyways, but I doubt Blizzard's willing to take that on a mere expansion after pruning the iconic ability. Spells like Empowered Life Tap and especially Drain Mana don't really provide a positive quality of life experience to the player or the recipient either, so I doubt those make a return also. Now, obviously having a player-bound interrupt back would be great, and not one that's tied to our actual pet, which you don't even use as Demonology, but at this point, that just seems like wishful thinking. As a whole, though, Shadowlands does look very promising, even with the very little information that we have at this point. Hopefully we see an alpha/beta launch sometime in early 2020, and can explore even more class changes once Ny'alotha comes to a close. If there was a spell or ability that I missed in which you think should be here or have any questions, drop it in the comment section below, and while you're down there, be sure to smash the subscribe button. I will also place a link to my Twitch where I stream 5 to 6 days a week in the description, where you can acquire any weak auras, profiles, or add-ons you've seen here. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see y'all again soon. Peace.